Welcome back, everyone, to Common Sense Choices, and I'm Linda Toupin. Well, guess what today is, you guys? It's Lucky 13 Day. This is our 13th episode, and some of you have been on this great adventure with me all the way since, December 2nd, 2021, and others, this may be your very first episode. You just stumbled in here on the Lucky 13 Day. Well, welcome. Pull up a chair, enjoy the conversation. If you're driving or you're listening on Apple and Spotify, remember, eyes straight ahead. And guys, I learned something this week. I've been saying this wrong. I learned to drive in the 1970s. Hands were at 9 and 2. Well, somebody who had my back, thank you guys for having my back, they said, Linda, that's been outdated for 30 years. Your hands go at 9 and 3. I guess it has something to do with airbags. I don't know. I didn't read all about it, but hands at 9 and 3, eyes straight ahead, and enjoy the conversation. If you're taking notes, guys, I have 2 sections in my notebook just from my guest speakers. That's how much I'm learning. Well, if this is your first time, our podcast is about personal responsibility, and the topics are never ending. They're very, very broad, but it's all based on the 7-foot piece of art in the background that says, and let's say it together because I have it on my coffee cup this morning, I am where I am by the choices I've made or I've allowed others to make for me. This is all about personal responsibility. If you don't like your life, make some different choices, and your life will go in the direction of those choices. God has gifted each one of us 10,800 minutes this week, 168 hours, and all of those minutes and all of those hours are made up of 35,000 choices. Yes, you heard me correctly, 35,000 choices. When you lay your head on the pillow tonight, you will have made that many choices. And where you end up at the end of your life is how and which choices you made. And so I thank you for choosing to click play on this podcast. I also thank you for choosing to share. When you share, like, and comment, first of all, I get to know you better. And since we're going on this adventure together, how fun is that? But also you're sharing it with people that you care about or that you're leading. And that shows support for our podcast. Well, speaking of things I learned this week, I learned that you guys can make me talk faster. Many of you are familiar with a business app called Voxer, and we can make people talk really fast, and so you can listen faster. Well, I found out this week that this is available, obviously, on YouTube. That's where it's housed, and that in my website, which connects you to YouTube. Well, if you're watching on YouTube, there's a little cogwheel at the bottom. I did not know this. And in there is closed caption if you just want to read it, but you can also put me on 2 speeds. So a 30-minute podcast, you could listen in half the time. Now, I might be talking a little bit like this, but if you're in a hurry and you just need to get to the main point, there you go. You guys, I love doing this with you because it's so audience driven. We had another idea this week. I'm telling you, you guys are just remarkable. Someone said you need a different coffee mug over at your store. And by the way, my store is over at lindatoupin.com. T as in Tom, O-U, P as in Peter, I-N, lindatoupin.com. There's a little store there. Now, this is kind of like a souvenir store, you guys. I'm not going into the mug business or the canvas print business. This is just my little souvenir shop so that you have something with our mantra on it, whether it's a coffee mug or it's an 8x8 little canvas print that you can hang in and put in your classroom or your office or in your home to remind people they are responsible for themselves. And there's hoodies and t-shirts over there, but somebody said you need a new coffee mug. So we have 2. You guys voted on them, and this is what we came up with. The first one says, one of my 35,000 choices today is ... and you flip it over, it says coffee. And the other one says, with 35,000 choices to make ... you flip it over, it says choosing coffee was the easiest one. So you can check those out over at lindatoupin.com. And while you're over there, you guys, you can sign up to receive every episode by email. So here's the way you want to think about this. Every Thursday at 7 p.m., I'm going to think about you. And I'm going to send you this episode. So you don't have to think about me. You don't have to put me on the to-do list. And all the people in your organization or group that you are sharing these with, if they just sign up, you don't have to think about them. I don't know about you, but I need those brain cells for other things. So just let me handle it for you. So go on over to lindatoupin.com and click the sign up button, and we'll make sure that you get every episode. Well, speaking of running our own business, which is the series that we're currently in, here's what I love the most about running my own business. I get an idea in the shower, and by noon, I've made the flyer and I've already made it happen. There's no committee. There's nobody to ask permission. Isn't that the thing we love the most about running our own business? Well, this week I had an idea. I was going through my phone, I was scrolling, and you guys were posting pictures of all the things that you were getting over at the little store. And I thought, I'm going to make a video about you guys. I'm going to take all these pictures that you all are taking, and I'm going to put them to my theme song, that music that plays when I come in and when I leave. Well, I'm going to do it. So all I need from you guys is for you to snap a fun, creative picture and send it to me at linda@lindatoupin.com. linda@lindatoupin.com. Everything is my name, you guys. It just makes my life easier and saves brain cells. And so you've got until March the 31st, you guys, to get your pictures to me, and I'll make a fun video. And last but not least, I don't have a corporate sponsor, but I thought the other day, I'm going to start giving shout outs to things that I really, really like. And someone said to me, Linda, your décolleté always has this nice little glow. Now your décolleté is part of your face, but it's like here on your chest. And I thought, you know what? I'm going to give a shout out today to all Mary Kay girls out there in the world, because the product I use on my décolleté is our Mary Kay Naturally Nourishing Oil. If you do not know this product, then you need to find yourself a Mary Kay girl in the next 3.48 seconds and order a bottle of this, because it makes you glisten. I don't know about you, but people need to glisten. You look better when you glisten. And with summer coming, you can put it on your shoulders and your arms. And oh my gosh, this stuff is wonderful. So be sure and hit your Mary Kay girl up for one of those. Well, let me catch you up. December, we worked on mental health. January, we worked on our physical health. February and March, and also going into April, is a big, long series of what does it truly take to run a business from your home. You met Cindy Williams, who talked about the attitude of victim or victor. You're obviously going to have to be a victor if you're going to run your own show. We heard from Robin Rowland on money and creating good money management habits in your in-home business. We heard from Curtis J. Hanna about compartmentalization, delegation, and technology as a single parent running a business from home. And you heard from me about a milk the cow work ethic mentality, because if you're going to be your own boss, you're going to have to be tough on yourself, because cows have to be milked at exactly the same time every day, and no excuses. And that's the attitude that you will need to run your own business. Well, we're going to continue on now in that series, and you're going to become reacquainted with two people you met very briefly in episode number 9. I introduced you in episode number 9 to 5 women who we collectively have ran our own show for 227 years collectively. And so we know a lot about what it takes to run an in-home business. Well, in today's episode, we're going to tell stories. I think one of the best tools that you can use to impart knowledge is stories, real life happenings that illustrate the point of what it takes to run an in-home business. And we're going to focus today mainly on boundaries. Okay, healthy boundaries that will have to be set up in your home for your family to take this serious, for you to take it serious, and for you to be able to work effectively. So would you welcome back to our show for the second time, all the way from Lubbock, Texas, my friend Jan Thedford, and from Oxford, Mississippi, my friend Kathy Goff. Brummett. Let me get that right, Kathy Brummett.
No worries. No worries.
Well, how are things in Oxford and Lubbock today, girls?
Wonderful.
Good. Good?
Yes.
I understand Jan's already been dealing with the emergency room this morning and grandchildren, and Kathy, you're working with spring break. You know, once you have kids, you're stuck forever. It never ends. Well, I think where I want to start with you all today, because I think this is a place that everybody who owns their own business, this is one of the first things that you will hear people say that they struggle with, is how do I turn it off? How do I turn this off? Because it's in my house now. It's not like I go to work and leave work, shut the door, and come home. My office is in my home. And so I'm going to start out by sharing with my audience a story of how I was able to do that. And then you all can hop in if you have a story to tell. I was probably 3 or 4 years old in the business. I was starting to get to the place where I was making money and becoming, moderately successful. But every Sunday night, my husband and I would visit his parents. They just lived down the road from us, and we had a ritual every Sunday night. His dad was a great cook, and they would prepare a wonderful meal, and then we played cards. And it was fun. I love to play board games and I love to play cards. But here's what I found myself doing every Sunday night was we're playing cards and I'm thinking about what I didn't get done last week, what I've got to do next week, the handout I had not made, the person I had not called. And so my in-home business was invading my private space to the place that I literally could not enjoy the game. I could not be present to the moment. And, we have all learned in our in home businesses over the years, and we've heard speakers say it all the time like, you've got to be present to that moment. When you're with your kids, you got to be with your kids. And when you're with your business, you've got to be with your business. And that all sounds really good, but it's harder than it looks. And so my turning point happened that night. And a turning point is a day in which you think a different thought, take action on your new thought, and change your life. And I know where I was sitting at the table when I thought, wow, they've been teaching me in my in home business how to do a weekly plan sheet, a time schedule, and post it on the refrigerator and actually set up specific hours to work. I bet that works. I bet that actually works. And you know what? When I started doing that and I started creating what we call the 6 most important things to do list, I realized that the simple act of a check mark by a list every morning, I was able to release it and say, there'll be a million things for the rest of my life on a list, but today I did what I said I was going to do. And that was where it started to turn for me. Do either of you remember when that really kind of turned for you? When did you kind of learn how to turn it off?
I think it was the same for me, Linda. Just learning to work from a list and walk out and close the door.
You know, I think for me it was, I realized one night when I was playing on the floor with the kiddos that, time management is guilt management. And I got so tired of feeling like I should be someplace else than I was. If I should be doing something with my work. Oh, now I'm doing something with my work. I really need to be home. And so that battle within me just drove me to doing what you just said, Linda's putting a time slot to the things that needed to be done. And because no one can keep our priorities for us except for us, right? And so I think sometimes we blame something else just because we weren't disciplined to really say, here's what's important to me, here's where I want to be, and then take action on that.
Well, and I think too, don't you feel like you have to get to a breaking point?
Yeah.
You have to get to a place where it's like, I'm sick of feeling this way. That old saying, I'll remain the same until the pain of remaining the same is greater than the pain of change. I think we all had to get, or at least I had to get to the place where it's like, I was mad. I was mad that I was sitting there playing cards and not being able to enjoy the night because my business had crept in. Well, there wasn't anything wrong with my business. It was, I had not disciplined myself.
Mm-hmm. Well,
So,
you get sick and tired of being sick and tired. You just get like, okay, I'm over it. I got to do this. And unfortunately, when people are working in home businesses, if they don't get a grip on that piece, it causes them to doubt and to step away many times when really it was just a matter of, a discipline in place. It wasn't that either one was in a bad place. It's just they didn't manage their time well. It happens a lot.
And it causes their family to resent their business.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely, because they can sense that you're really not present, or,
Mhm.
and I think that's in the episode on milking the cows. I held up a plan sheet and I said, your sister-in-law, if this is on your refrigerator, your sister-in-law comes in, she's not going to say you work all the time, because clearly you don't. Well, on the flip side of that, if that's all you ever talk about with your family is your business,
Right.
then they know that even though you're not working the business, you're thinking about your business. And so it becomes a mental discipline.
Mhm.
The other thing that we have to be disciplined on is a schedule. And so, Kathy, I'd like to segue over here to you for just a second, because we've got the plan sheet, it's on the refrigerator, we know when we're going to work, we have appointments in our home and out of our home depending on the nature of your business. But there's a discipline of not everything we plan on that plan sheet happens the way we want it to happen. Can you walk us through what that really looks like in the real world?
Yes, when I started my business, I started it because I wanted to stay at home. And I knew if I was going to be able to not have to go get a traditional job, I would have to make it work. And so I determined, first of all, how many time slots a week I wanted to work. Then I chose when they were going to be. And I love that. If I'm the boss, I get to choose how many and I get to choose when. But what I found was that inevitably appointments that I had scheduled would end up postponing or canceling. And then I had a decision to make. I have this 2 to 3 hour time slot, travel, get there, get home, all set aside to work. And that just postponed. Now, what am I going to do? I could either go hang out with the family or I could still work. I just had to work a different way. And I determined that anytime I had a postponement, I would take that same time period and I would go into my office, which was a desk in the closet in my bedroom. I would close the
Mhm.
door with a do not disturb unless there's blood sign, and I would work
Mhm.
right there on my phone. I would make customer calls and I would make prospect calls. And I knew at that time what the average sales that I could expect from that time period. And so I would make calls until I had sold that amount and until I had scheduled at least two more live in person appointments. And when I had sold that amount and scheduled those new appointments, then I knew I had accomplished what I would have accomplished when I left to my home to go work. And what I think too many entrepreneurs don't understand is that there always has to be a plan B. What do
Mhm.
you do when plan A doesn't work? Because if you're going to make this in home business work, you've got to have some way that you still make money when plan A doesn't work. And I needed my family to see me go to work, whatever that might look like, either leaving home or working in my office. So plan B is critical.
Well, I think the audience, after just listening to what you said, understands why you were very, very financially successful at your in home business for all of those years, because you just embodied with your story everything we had talked about so far in this series. And that is know your numbers, have a
Mhm.
schedule, and that's how
Mhm.
you earn the respect of your family. And then I love that you have brought up plan A and plan B.
Mhm.
Uh, let's talk about that physical office. I loved it, Kathy, when you said I had a desk in the closet and I closed
Yes.
the door and there was a sign that said it, do not disturb if you are unless you're bleeding. And
Unless
there better
there's blood. Yeah. I mean, it
And
started out as a desk in the closet. That's
right.
how it started. Now, thank goodness
My
it
first
grew.
office, my first office was my bedroom, and I set Indian style. Those were the in the years when I could do that and get back up. But I set Indian style on my bed, and I had a little filing cabinet because what I realized is my work, if I wasn't careful, was all over the house, and that wasn't good.
Mhm.
So I had to have a place where when I walked in that place, even though it was my bedroom, I thought, okay, I'm going to work. So a little filing cabinet, and then I had products and things under the bed, but all of it was right there handy. And then, as we got more successful and moved, I had an office, but at my office in the very beginning, I think that's what happens sometimes too guys, is that we expect so much more of our business before we put the work in, and
Mm.
I think we have a tendency to think, well, this is how my parents are. Well, your parents have worked 35, 40 years more than you have at that time. And so, but to Kathy's plan B, Linda, my thing is, when you have a plan B with knowing what your numbers are, knowing your time and all that, and then maybe even a plan C, the more your family watches you be willing to do that, they take you more seriously when they realize, this is important to her, because she's not giving up. And that really, I think that says a lot. If we, at the first little wind that goes through, cause us to quit, then people think, oh, well, that's not important to her. That it doesn't matter. That's not a
Well,
priority.
I love that you brought up this whole topic of your in-home business cannot be all over your house. It cannot be
Mhm.
spread all over your house.
Mhm.
And it literally, you guys, it has to, this is all respect. I see everything through a filter of respect. Like if your husband or your child came home with an in-home business and they spread it all over the living room and
Mhm.
it's in the kitchen, it's on the counter, it would just annoy people. And
Right.
and and that's where you start to lose respect. So even if it's just a closet, like Kathy said, or it's just the bedroom, and you're having to sit in the floor wherever. I lived literally in a 450 square foot house without insulation. I mentioned that in a different episode. And my first desk, I bought it, was $40. It was a wooden desk and it had been in a flood. The bottom shelves would not open, they had been swollen shut. And half the veneer was missing because it was at some used place. And I shouldn't say this, but I actually borrowed from behind the Dairy Queen 2 of their milk crates one day. I thought I would take it back eventually. But anyway, I borrowed a couple of milk crates, and that was my filing cabinet.
Mhm.
But that was my office, and I took pride in it. And it was a little tiny space, but it was where it all started,
Mhm.
was in there.
Mhm.
So I think the other thing, and I think we can address this real quickly, and we'll get on to a different subject, is today with the advent of technology the way we have it, guys, you can work a business from an airplane at 33,000
Mhm.
feet. You
Mhm.
can run down to Starbucks. If you need the environment of other people, and some people just need that environment, like they need to go somewhere where they're with other people, maybe, and that disciplines them to go to work at the coffee shop or at a local restaurant. And guys, there was many times, even when we had the old bag phones in our car, that I would just literally park down the street before I got to my
Mhm.
house.
Me
Um,
too. Mhm.
and Jan, I know that this kind of segues into respecting your family versus your business. Do you want to talk a little bit about, just before you drive back into your house, turning the business off and on?
Mhm. That seems to be something that is challenging. It doesn't matter how far we've come in technology, right? There are just some things that continue to challenge us. And that's how, in fact, what phones have done is create an atmosphere by which we're never through if we're not careful, because we can do everything. I remember, and you all do too, but by our company's standards of success, I mean, we'd had quite the success already before we ever even came out with email. It's just the craziest thing. But I remember so vividly when I made that decision that day, when I was sick and tired of being sick and tired, that I thought, okay, I'm going to finish my work on my little bag phone or car phone, which were huge. You could barely carry them, right? But I made a decision. I was going to sit out front of my house and finish before I walked in and I literally did this little word picture, because that's kind of the way I work. But I drove into my driveway and I just took my business head off and put my mommy hat on, so that the minute I re-entered, because there's no warm up to re-entry to children and family. It's just instant, that I could be in the moment and be present. And to kind of segue to what Kathy said, I was so thankful that, rather than, I was constantly reminding myself, Jan, this is a choice you've made. How great that you get to come into a crazy house, but yet you still get to call the shots, because this is what you wanted, right? You wanted the freedom to work from home and to not have to work another job. So that's what I did. And I just, walk in and like, hello, bath time. Here we go.
Here we
Oh
go.
gosh.
Well, and I'm glad that you brought up the whole point about today. In some ways, it's actually
Mhm.
harder for people to run
Yeah.
businesses from home because of this device. And again, that's just a boundary as well. Is do you actually answer people's text after 5 p.m. or 7 p.m.? Because when you start answering calls and answering texts from clients or business associates or team members or whoever they are in your world, you're giving them permission. They know that you will respond. And if it was a traditional job with traditional hours, after 5 o'clock, you wouldn't get anybody.
Yeah.
And so these are things that you have to decide. Do you really truly want to be on call 24/7? Well, let's kind of wrap this up today with some harder stories because I think that uh, the reason people want to run a business from their home is it mirrors their values, and their values clearly are heavy toward family. Family. I mean, people want to come home so that they have more time with their family and that they have more freedom and flexibility to spend on their family. And so, oftentimes, we hear, especially if your business is framed around mantras that have to do with family comes before career, that there are times where you have to put your career before your family. It actually is better for your family if you do. And we were talking before we went live here today, about the fact that, guys, you can't make these blanket statements like I will never. Well, first of all, no one should ever start a sentence with I will never. My
Amen.
child will never, I will never, my husband will never. That is a death sentence. Okay, you will eat that. Okay, at some point.
Mhm.
But guys, we can't make these big blanket statements that my business will never take priority over my family, because there is times where it actually needs to take precedence over your family. Can we talk about that? Kathy, you want to start us there on some stories about when you had to make some hard calls?
Well, my family knew that if there was an event coming up involving me, they needed to bring me the date as soon as possible. And they knew that I would put the date in my date book and that no other thing would get that time. It was theirs. But they also knew if they brought a date home and I already had a commitment to my business, that I would not call that person and cancel. I would stick to my word and I would make that appointment.
Mhm.
And I remember when my middle daughter was a senior in high school, I told her, it's your senior year, do everything this year. And she had never even been in the beauty pageant before. And so she decided, okay, I'll be in the beauty pageant. Well, when she brought the date home, I about fell apart because I had a commitment, not even in my town or my state. I had an out of state commitment on that date and I cried. And she knew that that meant I wasn't going to be there, and she probably cried too. I cried the night of the event when I was out of town. I knew that somebody else was helping her get dressed. Somebody else was helping her with her makeup. Somebody else was taking the pictures. Somebody else was watching her. And I was out of state at that event. And we never really talked about that again. But several years after that event, she was speaking at an event and she told the story. And she said, my mom not being there that night did not tell me that she didn't love me. And it did not tell me that her work was more important to her than I was. What it taught me was the value of being a woman of your word. And that was when I realized that sometimes putting your business first is actually putting your family first. There is no other way I could have ever taught her that lesson as effectively. And no matter how many times I said the words, it wouldn't have made as much difference as her. And actually, she and I both having to live that experience. It was
Mhm.
painful, but I know today that it was worth it.
Mhm.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, I can feel that pain, and every woman, every man listening has had to make those hard calls. But you have to think big, long term, and that's what happened there. And it may be
Mhm.
years before you see the reward of that. Jan, can you think of a time where you had to make some hard calls?
Yes, and Kathy, that story almost brings me tears to my eyes this morning, years later, because it is such a hard thing. And I remember when there was two things with our son Tanner. One thing was he had left a really important paper on his desk in his bedroom for his junior year, and I had an event where I was leaving town and catching an airplane, and he called and he said, "Mom, I need that paper." Well, the night before, I had asked him, "Do you have everything you need?" We had done our due diligence there, right? And he didn't. And I said these words, y'all, and I can remember the just chills about. I said, "Tanner, you're a junior in high school, buddy, and lack of planning on your part does not constitute an emergency on mine." And I was just like, oh, it just felt so harsh, but it was just the truth. And to this day, now that he owns his own business and a father of three, he'll say that day changed everything about his perspective. A couple years prior to that, I had a big event, special, unusual quarterly event that we used for our business. And it was on a year, it was at the end of our year where we're working towards big things. And he had a baseball game. And, I never once thought that Tanner was less important than my business. However, that particular event in my business that night was more important than that particular ball game. I went into his room, and 14-year-old boys, they just kind of grunt anyway. They're like, "Okay, Mom, whatever." I said, "Tanner, I love you, but I have to do this tonight because the team y'all are playing, you beat twice, and you're probably not even going to play pitch much. And so I'm going to have to miss tonight. But next week, when you're playing for the city championship, I'll be there." And that's when I realized, Linda, that there's no blanket. There's no blanket I will never. It's always, let's take this situation up against this situation and make the best decision that it's in line with our priorities and our boundaries that we can at that time.
Well, it is so funny, you guys. I'll end this on a lighter note because I think the audience is so grateful to both of you for telling a real story about a hard decision that is heart-wrenching. All of those were heart-wrenching decisions, but the long-term benefit is so much greater. My kids, even today, will say, "Mom was always late when she picked us up from school." Okay, she was always late. We were the last kids in the school line for Mom to pick us up. And so I was like, that is not true. I was not the last person every time. But it was interesting that now that my son has children and my daughter is older, and now they have messed up with their kids and they've done some stuff. The other day we just had this conversation where it was like, "You guys, you don't understand. This was before phones in your car. If I stood in a car line for 30 minutes doing nothing, I was wasting 30 minutes of my life doing nothing, absolutely nothing. I couldn't work on my phone. There was no phone to work on. And so if you add up all those 30 minutes that I didn't waste in the phone line, then you'll have the life you have today because your mom did those things." Because life accumulates. Life accumulates.
but Linda, I think too, it's hard sometimes to make those tough mom calls because we're so ingrained to put ourselves, second behind our children. And while there's a lot of, I understand that, but there's a lot of other things that are important as well. It's that old thing when we're in an airplane and they say, put the oxygen mask on you first, and so you can take care of everybody else. But sometimes we have a tendency to take care of this person without the oxygen for us, right? So those are just lessons.
There's a whole podcast on that sentence alone, Jan.
Yeah. I think it's funny too, y'all. I remember lots of times, and I'm sure you did too, sitting in the stands at the volleyball game or the softball game in a suit, while all the other moms had on shorts. We were sitting there with our suit and our heels because we were either just came from an appointment or we were headed to an appointment. But we got there for a few minutes.
That is for sure. And what we're role modeling for people, and for those of you who are listening who have just started your own business, or maybe you've been building a business for a while, guys, you're role modeling. the majority of children really don't know what their parents do for a living. They really don't. They just know my dad goes to the hospital or my mom goes here or wherever they work. But you have such an incredible opportunity to teach your children life lessons by having a business and home. And your children are watching you win and fail. And they're watching you struggle with time management, or watching you discipline yourself. And that is more valuable than anything you could ever give your children, is true life lessons. So anything else you all would like to share with our audience before we close this episode? Kathy, Jan, anything?
It's all worth it. It is worth it.
And both of my children have chosen to be entrepreneurs and self-employed and own their own gig. So obviously I didn't screw them up too bad, right? Obviously they saw some freedom and some joy in that they wanted to duplicate as adults. So that's awesome.
Well, I thank you guys so very, very much for giving of your time. One of those 168 hours you have gifted to me again. This is the second time. I owe you both big time, but I know that you have blessed my audience, and they will be encouraged and lifted and edified by the stories that you've shared today. And so for everyone who is watching today, I just encourage you to hold to your discipline and make firm decisions and choices about your business. And I think your homework today, I didn't write anything down before the episode started, but I think the homework will be, I'd like for you to comment in the comment section a decision of a boundary that you have made just listening to this today. Those are the simple little things that begin to happen to us that shape our business. So what's a boundary that you heard today that's like, okay, enough is enough. I've got to do XYZ. Share with our audience. I would appreciate it. And for all of you, thank you for being part of episode number 13, Lucky 13. And get ready. We've got even more episodes on how to run a successful business from home. It's going to run all the way into April. I just didn't have enough time. So thank you guys. Thank you, Jan. Thank you, Kathy.
Bye, Linda. Bye, Jan.
Bye-bye, y'all.